You're Father Gary Kyriacou, the Dean of the Greek Orthodox Cathedral of St. Sophia here in Los Angeles. And I'm Gina Demetrius, and full disclosure, I am a member
A
of the
good one,
Greek.
too.
Thank you.
A very
I
faithful
try.
one. Very faithful one. Good.
A member of this church, a lifelong Greek Orthodox
Hmm.
Christian, and a longtime journalist as well.
And a good one at that, too.
I appreciate
Yep.
that. Thank you. I try at that one too. And you're my priest. So we're talking about the New York Times article that reported on the conversion, many young men coming into the Orthodox faith because they're seeing it as a more masculine faith, a more masculine church, and so on. And you and I started having a discussion about this
We did.
last week, and we said, let's record this because we need to put some things in context. I, as a journalist, saw some things in the article that I felt, from a journalistic perspective, didn't put a lot of the discussion into context.
Mm-hmm.
And so you and I started talking about that. And I want to sort of level set from the beginning, which is explaining how the Orthodox Church works in terms of the fact that there are a number of ethnicities. It's the Eastern Orthodox Church, but it is run by patriarchs, right? From different ethnicities. Can you sort of lay that groundwork for us?
So, So there were 5 C's, S-E-E. There was Rome, Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. We know that the schism happened and Rome separated herself, right? So there's 4 other C's in our in communion. That's Constantinople, Alexandria, Antioch, and Jerusalem. Constantinople is the ecumenical patriarch. So when those patriarchs get together, he's the first among equals, right? So of those different C's, you have the Romanians, you have the Serbians, you have Ukrainians, you have the Greeks, you have the Russians, you have all these different ethnicities that fall in there. So saying Greek Orthodox Church means that we're part of the ecumenical patriarch of Constantinople. Being Greek Orthodox is, you have the ethnicity is Greek, but we don't celebrate the ethnicity outside of the faith. We celebrate the ethnicity within the faith as part of the faith. And so, and that needs a little bit more of an explanation, but that's where you get it. So our cathedral's made up of mostly Greek individuals. However, we have a lot of people who are Latino, who are Russian, Romanian, Ukrainian, Antiochian, African-American, Asian. We really have a very diverse congregation here at the cathedral.
Yeah, we do. And I see in other churches it has become even more diverse in different parts of the country.
It really has. It really has. I think people are looking for something deeper. Can I set groundwork as well, like you just did?
Yeah.
Sorry. The article was a good article. It was just very incomplete.
Yeah.
And that's where I had a problem with the article. I love that young men are finding purpose and they feel they're needed in the Orthodox Church, and they are. But the way the article made it sound was that's what we promote. And we don't just promote masculinity, right? You can find masculinity in the Orthodox Church, but you're also going to find very strong femininity as well. And those are to be celebrated equally.
Yeah.
Right. So that New York Times article, which was about the converts entering the Orthodox Church, was just, there was nothing wrong with what she wrote. It just was incomplete.
Yeah.
And what's important to understand is that the church is greater than just what she mentioned. And I don't want people to think that that's the shallowness of our faith, because the Eastern Orthodox Church is very deep and very profound in the things that we celebrate and the things that we do.
Well, and part of that too is that it is among the smaller of the denominations of Christian faiths here in the United States, right?
Right.
So,
I think that New York Times article mentioned like 1% of the population.
Right. So it has been flying under the radar for quite a while in terms of discussions in the culture, right, around Christianity.
You know, what's interesting is that one of the a YouTube influencer whose name is Father Moses McPherson was a convert that I helped bring into the church. And I remember sharing with him about 20 years ago that the Orthodox Church is the best kept secret in America. And his response was a great one. And he said, why would you want to be a secret?
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, that's true. Why do we want to be the best kept secret? And so word is getting out about what Orthodoxy is, and it's great. But I think that what we need to do, and that's what I'm hoping that we do in this interview, is just explain it a little bit further so that people really kind of understand and grasp its content.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about what it is that these men were looking for when and what it is that they're actually maybe should be getting, right, within the Orthodox Church. It sounds like from the article, and I've been hearing anecdotally about the term Orthobros since at least the beginning of 2025. So there seems to be some discussion that's been going on for quite a while around this. They're looking for a rigorous type of faith that they can practice. It sounds like they're also looking for more tradition, and we'll get into what that actually means, what the word tradition actually means in the church. Traditional marriages, a lot of things around their social lives. But they're being converted, right, by clergy of the church. So can you talk about that? What it is that they're getting from specific Orthodox clergy that is leading them to believe that this is what the Orthodox Church is about, when you're saying that's not really the whole picture?
So I think that the clergy that are leading them into the church are doing a good job of introducing them to what it means to be Orthodox and the askesis, the exercise of practicing Orthodoxy. I think the problem is that they're looking for that to be the solution to what they are craving in their lives. And the only thing that's going to fill the void in our lives is Christ. And practicing the Orthodox Church with all of its purposes and all of its bells and whistles is the best way to experience Christianity. That's how you experience Christianity in its fullness. And I really believe that the work that these young men are looking to do is they've not been receiving guidance in their lifetime. There's not really a place where they go to learn how to be men. 50 years ago, you'd go to the army and life was much different. There were social norms that were much different than they are today. So there are things that young men are not receiving in society today that they got 50 years ago. The church is not the place to teach that, though. The church is not the place where they're to go to receive that kind of education or those experiences. The church's job is to spread the gospel of Christ, which is love, and to make sure that that message is comprehended in its fullness. So when you exercise the askesis of the Orthodox Church, you're really entering into a difficult lifestyle, because the Orthodox Church demands a lot from us. And the other thing is, the Orthodox Church also has what's called economia, which is like grace. And that allows the priest to walk with the person at their pace. So not everybody has to do the same thing in the same ways all the time. So we have fasting periods. Some people fast from everything, meaning they eat raw vegetables for the 40 days that they're doing it. Some people just fast from meat product, right? Some people fast from oils and dairy and all of those things. And it all depends on the individual, right? I'm not going to tell a 75-year-old grandmother who has to take, medication for diabetes or whatever, not to take her medication without food because she's going to receive Holy Communion. That's contrary to the teaching altogether, right? So everything has to be taken in context with the person's life. And that's the beauty of the Orthodox Church.
So what is your response then to potential converts when they're coming in saying, boy, I saw so-and-so father.
So it's funny you say that because that actually happened.
Yeah. I figured.
It really did happen. It was in one of our catechism classes, and a young man, and I always tell the individuals that come to these classes, how much I admire them coming, because a lot of them come on their own. And coming through the gates, parking, coming into the building, coming upstairs into the building takes a lot of courage, right? So the fact that they're there is one thing. Then to ask questions and to enter discussion is even greater than that. So I give them a lot of credit for participating. But in that conversation, we were talking about the understanding of economia and grace that's given in different situations. And this one young man blurted out, he goes, I'm trying to get away from the gray areas, and you're telling me that the Orthodox Church is nothing but gray area.
Yeah.
And I said, that's the beauty of the Orthodox Church. I said, the gray area is where you find your strength. And he goes, what do you mean? I said, it's what we walk with each individual person. So I'm going to say this. My responsibility is not the entire Orthodox Church. My responsibility is the Cathedral of St. Sophia in Los Angeles, right?
Yeah.
So when people come here asking about becoming Orthodox, I make sure that they understand that the first and most important lesson to live by is Christ's gospel, and that's to love God and love your neighbor. And that's what we build everything on here at the Cathedral. Those are the tenets that we build all of the ministries, all of the things that we do on is love God and love your neighbor. So from there, then we go individually to the person, to what they need. There are lots of people who struggle with different kinds of addictions, pornography, or even drug and alcohol. And the Orthodox Church has ways to help people through those things and to nourish the soul, to fill them so that they don't feel vacant and ostracized by society because they have those issues. And so these priests that are talking about masculinity and putting women, that women should be homeschoolers and women should be home caretakers and women should be, shouldn't be working or shouldn't be doing things.
Which let's face it, that is not even practical, because most people need a 2-income household anyway.
I can appreciate the importance of family and setting that precedent. But I think that the lesson that we give to our kids is that mom can be a doctor, mom can be a lawyer, mom can be a journalist, and do these things. And you can raise a good family that way as well, as long as you have Christ as the center and the focus of that. And I think that's where we miss out on it, because you think that if mom is off at work, you can't have Christ as the focus of your family. And there's a way to do those things in a very balanced, understandable way, especially in this day and age, that women have something to contribute. And I think that should be celebrated and that should be offered.
Can you talk about that then within the context of the Orthodox Church? Because, of course, one of the things is that women cannot be in the clergy. Right.
And that's something that I've always wrestled with, because I'm progressive that way and think that there are very holy women whose hands I should be kissing. And I attempt to when I see Mother Markela up at the Monastery of the Life-Giving Spring. She's a very holy woman, and I feel like her hand should be kissed. But it's our tradition that men serve in those ways, right? And it's the tradition of the church. And that's the beauty of the Orthodox Church, is that the tradition kind of holds the rank a little bit. And the tradition kind of holds things together. Because if Father Gary wanted to go off as a splinter, then Father Gary's not living by the organization of the church, which is what keeps us as an apostolic successional church, right? So what I mean by that is that if you're going to be part of the church and be in communion with the church, you have to do things and allow the church to influence the decisions that it makes through the Holy Spirit, and not just what Father Gary thinks, right? So women can't serve as clergy, but many women serve as spiritual advisors. Many female nuns are spiritual advisors. Women can't serve in the altar, but many women go into the altar to clean the altar, to help do that. But I'm not saying that that's what women are subjugated to doing, right? Many women are great teachers in the church. Many women are great chanters, great educators. I mean, I mentioned them in my Instagram post with Presbytera Jeannie Costandinu, Dr. Eve Tibbs, Dr. Ann Bezarides. These are all great women of the church who are doing magnificent things to spread the gospel and to educate our youth and educate converts on what it means to be Orthodox. So the beauty of the Orthodox Church is the tradition of the Church. And the tradition of the Church holds true that nothing changes unless the Church comes together in harmony and discusses the issues that need to be changed, and they change them. And that, the joke was mentioned in the New York Times articles about the Orthodox men who are becoming Orthodox converts, about change, right? How many Orthodox does it take to change a light bulb? Change.
What is that?
Doesn't happen very often.
Well,
I don't know if I'm answering your question properly. So let me go and say this as well. The early church had Saint Phoebe. The early church had Saint Priscilla. The early church had Mary Magdalene, who is considered the apostle to the apostles, because she's the one that encountered the risen Lord, and the Lord is the one who sent her to tell the men to stop hiding and that he's risen, right? You read the Gospels and you understand that you have these stories that are being told in different books of the gospel that are being mentioned by other gospel writers about how, and then two people saw him on the road and we didn't believe them. And then the women saw him and we didn't believe them. And then Peter and John ran to the tomb and they saw it and we believed them, right?
Yeah.
They believed the men. Patriarchal society, you get it, right? But it was the women who did the work.
Right. They laid the groundwork.
They totally did.
Yeah.
They totally did. And you go, the Orthodox Church has survived persecutions, has survived all kinds of wars and different things. It was the family unit, meaning the father and the mother, the grandfather, the grandmother, who kept the church's traditions alive in their households, as the Nazis, as the Italians, as the Ottoman Empire was coming in to extinguish it.
Mm-hmm.
And their faith meant so much and they held on to it. The other thing that I really think needs to be grasped as well is there's no Orthodox Church in America if it weren't for the ethnic people that came, the immigrants that came from their countries and established it here. They didn't come here and they didn't show up and the cathedral was built here. They showed up and established communities and built these communities. And they didn't say, this is a Greek club, you have to be Greek to come here. They opened it up and, as the gospel says, preach it to all nations, right? So the immigrants could have come here and assimilated and become a Protestant. They could have become Catholic. They could have become whatever. But their Orthodox tradition was so important to them, they established it here in America, and they established churches. The Antiochians, the Lebanese, the Syrians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Romanians, everybody came and set up their faith tradition here because it was important to them to practice it the way that it was being practiced at home. And so it's important to realize that tradition goes really deep and hard and fast. And those people who don't understand tradition and throw it out don't realize that when you throw out tradition, you're throwing out scripture as well, because scripture comes from the tradition of the church.
But also these so-called Orthobros are using the word tradition as the way that they're actually coming into their belief of what the Orthodox Church is. So does that word tradition have a double-edged sword to it in some ways?
See, here's the thing about the Orthobros is that I don't want to villainize the understanding of these young men that want to come into the church. I want to be very careful with that.
Yeah.
Because anybody that's seeking to come into the church should be welcome to come into the church. And so the Orthobros, Orthogals, if you want to create a new topic, a new moniker today, we can do that as well. But what's important to me is that they don't taint the meaning of the gospel according to the tradition of the church. And what I mean by that is don't hide behind the beards. Don't hide behind the robes. Don't hide behind the smoke from the incense. Step out of that and realize what we're doing through those things, right? Don't hide behind the 40 prostrations before you kiss an icon. Don't hide behind those traditions to make yourself feel like you're complete.
Because it comes off as somewhat performative.
Not only that, but then you get back into the Pharisaic understanding of you have to do this to acquire holiness, right? And there's nothing that we can do to earn
that it's transactional.
God's love. It's not transactional. And any relationship that becomes transactional is doomed for failure. I mean, that goes from mother to son and husband and wife, and any relationship that becomes transactional, where if you do this and I do that, then we can get along. That's not what the Lord did. The Lord died on the cross and said, now you come to me, you who are heavy burden, and I'll give you rest, right? Come to me and do this, and you'll find peace in the kingdom. And I just think that I don't want people to say that he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, because doing the fasting, doing the prostrations, doing the prayers does help you lead to holiness. But if it's done without the intent of loving God, like if you do it and then hate your neighbor, like if you do it and then say, I hate these people that do this or these people that live that way, how is that pleasing to God?
Which we see in some of the posting.
We do. Yeah. And how can you say you hate your neighbor, but you love God, when St. John in his letter says, I don't understand how people say they love God whom they've never seen and they don't love their neighbor.
One of the things that struck me after reading the article and sort of digging in more is the social media of it all that undergirds this new development within the Orthodox Church, how meme-driven it is, and not in a really Christian way. Some of the memes I saw are actually pretty insulting. So I'm wondering how it is that the greater Orthodox Church, aside from, let's say, an interview like this, but like what are the hierarchs in the church saying at this point? Are you guys getting together and talking about this? I know Archbishop Orthobros had a response to the article when he wasn't obviously included in the article to begin with.
Which he should have been.
Which he should have been, in my opinion, as a journalist. I mean, somebody from the hierarchy should have been included with a response.
That's the beauty of the Orthodox Church, is that if you're going to go to the Orthodox Church, you should go to the hierarchs who are responsible for it, right? I can tell you this, that when we clergy get together, the topic of people coming into the church is a topic of conversation. We get together often here in the metropolis of San Francisco with the clergy by Zoom. Our brotherhood does a good job of getting together. A few of us were just together for lunch last week, and it's a topic of conversation. We talk about these things. We're trying to create a program that is uniformed for bringing people into the church, so that there's no such thing as church hopping, right? Oh, Father Gary only makes you go 3 months. Right. Father Josiah makes you go 5 years, right? Father Cristo makes you go 6 months. And then you're like, I'll go over here and become Orthodox. Then I'll go to Father Josiah Trenum. And, but there's got to be some uniformity around it. Going back to your question about social media, though, that's a greater, and we could do a whole other thing on that.
Right, that's a whole other topic.
The whole value of if you don't know of somebody's heart because of what they post on social media, right? And sometimes people post things on social media just to get likes and to monetize it. And sometimes you post something because you want to get 1,000 likes, 10,000 likes, and then it becomes monetized. We have to find value in doing things when it's not monetized. The value for the sake of there just being a coherently understandable value to just being altruistic, just for doing it, just for the good of doing it. The young lady that does the social media for the Cathedral kept telling me, we're getting so many likes, we're getting this, we're getting that. And I need to separate myself from that, because as much as
Yeah.
I want to jump into and be like,
Yeah.
what? We got 20,000 likes. It's not about the likes. It's
Right.
about the one person that heard it, the message be preached this way. And I needed to explain it
What is
this
the
way.
deeper impact of it
Right.
all?
And so, but you as a human being, we get so caught up in the ratings, in the likes, in the things, right? And then, you know, my daughter started reading me some of the comments that people were writing.
I know. I want to ask you about some of those too, because some of them were, you know, a little,
but here's the thing.
They dig.
But Dina, here's the thing.
Yeah.
They crucified the Lord. They beheaded John the Baptist, right? 11 of the 12 were martyred,
Yeah.
right? Father Tom Paris of blessed memory used to say to me, if you think you're going to be treated any better, you're crazy, right?
Right.
So when we put this on, when you step into a leadership role, you need to be ready to be knocked down, and people want to see us get knocked over, right? And they're going to post in there, but the message, you can't refute the message of Christ when the message is love. And that's all that I'm trying to say, is that that's the message of the Orthodox Church, is love. There are things that we all can do better to love our neighbor. We can love our neighbor better. We can love God better. And I think putting a meme that is derogatory, putting a meme that is sexist, putting a meme that is anti-Semitic is not what the Orthodox Church is about. And that doesn't promote the message of Christ.
Let me ask you about a comment that I saw on one of your posts in response to the New York Times article, which was, sure, a priest in Los Angeles would say something like this, right? How do you respond to that? That, okay, you're in what's considered a more liberal part of the country. Are you reflecting back what the larger church is actually saying about this?
I want to be careful in how I answer that question, because I don't know exactly how the larger church is responding, but I can tell you that a priest in Brooklyn, a priest in Boca, a priest in Tampa, a priest in San Diego, a priest in Long Beach, a priest in Sacramento, a priest in Seattle, a priest, did I say Chicago yet?
No.
A priest in Chicago, Indiana, and Arkansas all reached out to me and said, thank you for saying what you said. So yes, I'm in LA. Yes, this is what I don't even, you know what? I'm so non-political that I don't know what
No, I know you are. You're not.
I really am. Like, like, I'm not joking when I say, like, when people say it's a red state or a blue state, I don't know what, I really detach myself from all of those conversations.
Yeah.
Because my political party is the gospel. It really is. Like, you can't be a particular political party and be a good Orthodox Christian. You have to be a good Orthodox Christian and then make your decisions based on that.
But isn't that so? For people who aren't part of the Orthodox faith, and this conversation is kind of inside baseball, right? For others, this kind of speaks to what's been going on generally. I've done some reporting, and I think you saw some of it, about how politics has actually entered churches to the point where there are certain Protestant denominations in particular that are splitting up because of that. I reported on the Christian Reformed Church in Western Michigan, which has seen a complete 180 in terms of their doctrine, and to the real sort of, they're feeling like it's all mind-boggling for the former pastors or the retired pastors who were part of that church, and now it's a completely different complexion for them. So that's kind of the era that we're in right now. And so I'm wondering how it is that the Orthodox Church is handling, managing that, to not allow the politics to enter the church, rather to have the church inform how someone is approaching society.
So, it breaks my heart when a person doesn't feel loved because of the bed they're sleeping in. It breaks my heart when a person doesn't feel loved because of the color of their skin. And I have family members who are scared of the church because of the things that they see online and they think the church promotes. It breaks my heart for anybody to think that they're not welcome to the church because of whatever they are. Come to the church and have a conversation about it. Just come sit and talk about it. And let's figure out a way for you to understand how much God loves you. Let's talk about your identity as a person, not just based on your sexual identification, not based on your sexual preference. Let's talk about you as just an individual and a child of God, period. Let's just start there, right?
It's emotional when you
It really
people, right?
It really bothers me that if you don't think the way that I do, that we can't be friends.
Yeah.
Right? And there are so many people that feel excluded, and that's who Jesus came for, was the people that were excluded. He came for the underdog. He came for the woman who was bleeding for all those years and spent all her money on what was the traditional thing to do to get better. But she realized that it's Christ that I need in my life to make me better. Whatever it is that you're having an issue with, just come have a conversation about it. You might not hear the answer that you exactly want to hear. And I'm going to be bold and say this. You might be thinking, are the same-sex couples going to finally get married in the Orthodox Church? No, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. But come and have a conversation with me about it. Come and talk to me about it. Come and sit where you're sitting, and let's have a conversation, child of God to child of God, about the struggle that you're going through. Why are we excluding people because of these things? Why are we telling them that they're not good enough? Why are we telling them that they're not loved by God? When indeed we all carry baggage. We all have sin in our past. We all have something that is keeping us from feeling totally worthy. And you can have all the self-confidence in the world. You can have all the self-confidence in the world to strut and to walk and to flex and to be all of that. But if you don't feel worthy, loved by God, the worthiness that you get from being loved by God, you're missing out on such an important aspect of who you really are. When you put your identity in a sexual preference or in a gender, you're missing out on who you really are, because we're not our sexual preference. We're not our gender. We are children of God. And I think that until we realize that, until we come out of defining ourselves by that, we're going to be short as a society. So I don't want people to think that Father Gary is a walkover or a washout, but I'm ready to tackle these issues in a way that makes sense to living by the gospel.
Well, and I find it interesting that in this moment, this particular, again, we're going to just call it Orthobro because that's the handle for it right now, thing, development and trend is growing at the same time that right now the patriarch in Constantinople, Istanbul, is meeting with the Pope in the first time ever in this sort of
in Turkey,
in
Constantinople,
regarding the 1700-year anniversary of the Council of Nicaea, which was a gathering of bishops to work out the doctrines and the faith of the early Christian church.
Exactly, because they were teaching all these different things. And what did the church do? They said, we need to come together, arm in arm, sit around and figure it out. Who do you say Jesus is? Right? Who do I say Jesus is? If we're going to be part of the same body of Christ, we need to express him exactly the same way. And so that's what they did. And so that's why, a Christian just isn't a Christian, is a Christian. A Christian is somebody who understands that Christ is the only begotten Son of God, who came into the world through a virgin, was born as an infant, was taught and crucified and rose from the dead. Those are the things that need to be understood about Jesus, and that he's one person of the Trinity. And then we need to understand the Trinity. And you know what the church did? Several hundred years later, got together for another ecumenical council and described what the Trinity is. So the church in her wisdom knows when to come together. And I'm thrilled that we have leadership like the current Pope and Patriarch Bartholomew who know that it's important. Unity now more than ever is really important.
But what also stands out to me is that it's Patriarch Bartholomew, right? What can you, this is going back to something I was starting to ask earlier, but we started talking about something else. But I want to understand these conversions that are happening online are tending to go toward a particular Orthodox church. Is that not happening so much in the Greek Orthodox Church? But it's going more toward, let's say, OCA, which is more Russian. I mean, I want to understand what it is with the interplay, right, between the different types of Orthodox churches.
You know what, Dina, to be fair, I can't answer that because I only know the Greek Orthodox side of it, right?
Yeah.
And okay. I can tell you that on the Greek Orthodox side of it, when anybody comes in towards me with a very militaristic view of the faith, I diffuse that immediately.
Yeah.
Because it's not it, right? So
do they tend to go away, or do they tend to sit and listen and understand better?
If they're willing to take the pushback, they stay. And the last several have stayed. As a matter of fact, a week before his chrismation, one young man said, Father Gary, in a group of people, he said, Father Gary, do you remember when you told me to leave and go somewhere else and look at Orthodoxy from at a different place? And I said, I never told you to leave. And he said, yes, you did. You said you should experience other Orthodox churches to make sure this is where you want to practice Orthodoxy. And I said, yeah, I wasn't asking you to leave. I just wanted to make sure that you knew that you had other options and that the Greek Orthodox Church wasn't the only option, that there's an Antiochian church down the street, that there's an Orthodox Church of America down the street, that there's another Greek Orthodox church you can go to, that this is not your only choice. And the reason I say that is because I don't want you to follow Father Gary. I want you to follow Christ, right? And so diffusing the understanding that you're going to come here and you're going to walk the way that Father Gary tells you to walk, and you're going to stand the way Father Gary tells you to stand, and you're going to do all these things that Father Gary tells you to do. You better run when somebody starts preaching like that.
Yeah, and you hear that and some of the social media.
You should not stick around when a priest is telling you that that's what you need to do.
In fact, in response again to the New York Times article, there was a Russian bishop outside of Russia, is based in London, who wrote a response. I think it was actually earlier in the year, but it wasn't in response to the New York Times article.
It was in regards to.
But it was in regards to.
This has been a hot subject for a good several years now, and so the New York Times.
He told them, walk on. If this is what you're coming here for, you need to just move on.
It is, and it's and you said he was Russian, right?
Yes.
So
Bishop Irani.
Yeah. So it's not about a certain ethnicity being tougher than another ethnicity. It's not. You see, the Orthodox Church has fasting rules, has ascesis, which is ascetical rules, right? And these are things that are you have to have discipline to do them. But the discipline doesn't come from being macho and being able to do that. The discipline comes from understanding what it leads to. Right? And leading to holiness means that you're becoming more like Christ. Becoming more like Christ means that you love your neighbor. Loving your neighbor means that you're not judging them, but you're holding them accountable and you're bringing them close to you to address the things that need addressing, that need to be talked about. So let's talk about them instead of just judging somebody by their exterior and by the way that they look and the way that they act. It's not fair.
So one of the reasons why I think this is an important topic and what's happening in the Orthodox Church with these conversions is sort of an example and a paradigm of what's happening in a more wide scale way, not just here in the US, but globally. And that is where people are finding their niche, where people are finding what they're thinking of as their people, their group. And I'm wondering what you think this means for people outside of Orthodoxy, because I have also reported on cults. I know what that looks like and what the hallmarks are of being involved in that.
They're very similar, aren't
And
they?
they're very similar. They're a cult of personality. There's very much a feeling of I'm looking up to this one particular person or this one particular
Do
ideal.
you know how great that makes you feel as a person, as a religious leader? You
Sure.
know how great it makes you feel when they say that about you, but
Yeah.
how you have to humble yourself and remind yourself. And that's why I think that having my wife is so important to me, because when I get home, I have to take out the trash,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When I get home, I have to go pick up after the dog,
Presbytery keeps you
right?
humble. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's the beauty of it. Not because we're being lenient and that we don't want celibate clergy. We have celibate clergy and they have a discipline they need to live by as well. But it's not the cult of personality in the sense that you come here to follow Father Gary. And that's like Father Tom Paris of blessed memory, and I refer to him often. He taught me some great lessons. And a lesson was, if they're coming to the church because of you, you're not doing your job. Right? And so we need to all look at that and realize that if you're going to the Orthodox Church because of what one person's podcast is, you're going to the Orthodox Church because of what one episode of a podcast was. Are you really going to base your soul's salvation on that one person and that one podcast? Or are you going to go look at the depth and greater detail of it all so you can understand it and grasp it in a way that was meant to be grasped, right? Our job as clergy is to put you on the path to walk towards theosis, towards holiness. The Orthodox Church doesn't have a political agenda, period. That's our political agenda, is that we don't have one. And if anybody's coming into the Orthodox Church for a political agenda, please don't come here. The cathedral's not a sounding board for politics. The cathedral's a place for people who are sick, who want to be made whole, people who are lost that want to be found. So, and again, I'm only talking about the cathedral because I'm not responsible for the entire Orthodox Church, right? And even being responsible for the cathedral is a huge task for me to wrap my head around. But I would be lost in my life if it weren't for the cathedral and the ministries that it offered. I would be lost in my life if it didn't have the Goya basketball, if it didn't have the summer camp, if it didn't have the Greek dance, if it didn't have those things. I would be lost. If you told me that I had to come here and do prostrations and kiss icons and fast, I don't know if I would be around the church today. Those are great things now as a mature Christian. But if I were to go into the gymnasium now where all the kids are dancing and practicing and hanging out, and I said, then none of you can do this unless you do 40 prostrations and kiss the icon and fast on Wednesdays and fast on Fridays.
Yeah. You would definitely get that look.
Right?
Yeah.
But is that the point of the church? Now, you're going to argue with me and say they can't just come for that. Okay, they can't. But you know what? The love of God doesn't sit in the temple waiting for the people to come to him. God went to the well. God went to the hillsides. God went to the villages. God didn't sit in one place waiting for people to come to him. We go to them and we show them the love. We show them what it is. And maybe the seed gets planted now and doesn't blossom 5, 10, 15 years from now. God knows that's how it worked in my life, right? I was not born a priest and I was not born to be a priest. And God had other plans, and God is great that way. My point being is that the Orthodox Church's job is not to promote a political party. The Orthodox Church's job is to give people the opportunity to glorify God in a way that is more profound than just saying Jesus is my friend.
And given that this is called the compass, I think you're outlining what you see as the true north for what
You know, on my
the conversion into Orthodoxy could look like.
I've said this before, but my car, and I need to stop relying on this so much in my car, but my car has this thing where if I drift, it pushes me back in the lane. Do you know what I mean? Like I go like this, and it's like there's like a force field. It's like get back in there, and I feel like that's what the church is. When we start to drift, the church needs to come and go, get back over there, right? Stay there. And the Lord says the road is narrow, the gate is narrow to get in there. And that means, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that that only the people that can do 40 prostrations can get in, or only the priests with long beards and that wear robes can get in, right? It means that the people that are going to do the work and want to stay on task and keep their eye on Christ are the people that are getting close to it, right? And so there are a lot of things in the Orthodox Church that I don't like. We could do a whole other thing on that. Yeah. But it doesn't matter what Father Gary likes and doesn't like. Father Gary's job is to teach the teachings of Christ in the way of the Orthodox tradition. And that New York Times article about young men coming into Orthodoxy to find masculinity was incomplete in talking about what the Orthodox Church is.
Well, let's wrap this up with what your message is to the women who are seeing this, who might be considering Orthodoxy, who are hearing their, that particular perspective coming out of a particular small section of the Orthodox Church.
The best way that I can answer that is by telling a story.
Okay.
And so the story that I'll say is this. There was a young lady that was coming to church every Sunday, and she was never taking communion. She would come to church every Sunday, do her cross, and she was never taking communion. So one Sunday after church, coffee hour, I went over to her and said, how come you don't take communion? She says, I'm not Orthodox. I said, what are you doing here? She says, I'm marrying a Greek boy, and I want to make sure that I understand the Orthodox Church because I'm going to marry him. And I said, do you want to become Orthodox? She goes, yeah, how do I do that? And she didn't know about the conversion process. So I told her about it. She started reading about Orthodoxy. She started falling in love with it. She started, all of it. And ultimately she entered the church. When they got married, as they stood at the altar at the cathedral, right there in the Sophia, I looked at him and I said, she just saved your soul. I said, your being Greek brought her to the church. She fell in love with the church. Her dedication to the church has now brought you back to the church. She saved your soul. So what is my message to just not only the young women, but to the men, is that every action, every interaction we have leads to the betterment of the person or the demise of the person. How do you want to be remembered after each interaction, right? So the young women of the church, don't focus on the things that you can't do. Focus on the things that you can do, right? You are a great leader. You served our Philippics. You still serve the Philippics. You're a great journalist. You're taking it upon yourself as an Orthodox Christian to make sure that the right things are being mentioned about the church. My message to not only just young women, but to young people is get off of your phones, get out of your heads and get into your hearts. Seriously, like stop. And that message is for me as well. I get lost in my phone often, right? And you have to turn it off and look at each other and put your head up, right? And be that. If I can mention Father Tom Paris of blessed memory again.
One more time.
We walked into a hospital once and I was looking down because, when a priest gets on a plane or walks into a hospital, nobody wants to be around, right? You see a guy coming into a hospital
dressed in black,
like this, guy getting on a plane, they're like, don't want that. Right? So as a young new priest, you're like looking down like nobody wants to see me. Nobody wants to see me. And he kind of tapped me in the back of the head in a loving way. Just like he said, chest up, chin out, smile. And I looked at him and said, huh? And he goes, you represent Jesus to all these people. That's my message. Yeah. That's it. We represent Jesus to all these people. And you know what? I fail more times than I would like to. And that's the beauty of my relationship with Christ, is that he accepts me back every time. And so that's the beauty of the Orthodox Church, is that we live by the sacraments. And that's where the navigation just puts me right back on track. So the message is, live to your potential, to what God has as a potential for you, not what society says is your potential. God has a deeper purpose for each of us. And if we don't acknowledge that and don't realize it, it was one of the key things in that article, the New York Times article. The key thing was that they're finding purpose.
Yeah,
How
that's what
great,
was missing. Yeah.
how great is that they're finding purpose? But let's make sure it's the right purpose. It's the right kind of service, right? Let's not neglect 50% of the population because we're finding purpose. Let's make sure that we're working together in harmony and in love with each other, and to realize that all of us fall short. And that's the beauty of the church, is that we lift each other up and take them. I read recently, a good leader doesn't lead, a good leader lifts people up. And
Yeah.
that's what the Lord does. He lifted people up, right? And so if that's what we can do, that's the example that we have. That would be the message that I would give to all young people, is live to the potential that God wants you to live to, not to what society tells you to live to.
Thanks, Father.
You're welcome.